Hello. Today I'd like to talk about the importance of economics. I think one of the key issues in economics is the idea that in society we have a scarcity of resources and we seek to try to maximize the distribution and production of these resources through society. And economics plays a role in deciding the best way of doing this. So, for example, um, you could look at different ways that countries set up their economy. So, in the communist era, we had what's called a command economy or a government planned economy. And in that society, the government decided what to produce, how to produce it, and who got it. Whereas these days, most economies tend to be some form of free market mixed economy, which is when the free market decide um, what goods to produce depending upon consumer demand, and the government only play a fairly limited role in providing certain goods and services, perhaps underprovided by the free market. So economics is really quite wide-ranging. You can look at individual markets. So, for example, you could look at, say, transport. And here, economics again is concerned with perhaps the best distribution of resources. And in a free market, you will get firms producing cars and consumers buying them. But an economist may say that leaving it to a free market may not lead to an optimal allocation of resources, because in this particular market, there are externalities involved. When people drive, they consider what's the best decision for them. But if everybody drives to work, then we can get congestion in city centres and a lot of time wasted in traffic jams. And so, from an economic point of view, this is inefficient because we're spending money just to sit in a traffic jam. And an economist may weigh up all the different options and look at the situation of driving into work and saying, well, in this case, we have a good where there's an external cost of driving, which is pollution, congestion, and perhaps increased risk of accidents. So, in this case, an economist would say that the free market is underestimating the social cost of driving, and so would perhaps recommend higher taxes for driving into a city centre at peak time, and perhaps using that money to provide other means of transport, such as trains or encouraging cycling. So that's an example of how an economist may look at a particular market like transport. From a wider economic perspective, economics is important for what we might call the macroeconomy, which is looking at the overall state of the UK economy, economic growth, inflation, unemployment. Because one of the factors that really determines economic welfare is the rate of economic growth, the rate of income per person, and the amount of employment. So, for example, if a free market economy went into a recession, that means that we have a fall in output, there's less demand for workers, and a rise in unemployment. And in response to this situation, economists may suggest ways to try to help the economy to recover and create jobs. So, in a recession, the government could pursue expansionary fiscal policy, which is increase government spending, cut tax, and borrow from the private sector to afford this. And by injecting money into the economy, it is hoped that this will lead to an increase in aggregate demand, stimulate economic activity, and lead to an increase in demand for workers, thereby reducing unemployment. And if successful, that can lead to a big improvement in the welfare of society. Also, taking unemployment, other economists may say, well, increasing aggregate demand may not be enough. You need to also consider supply side unemployment. So, an economist may say, if we have unemployed workers, we need to examine, do these workers have sufficient education and training? And if not, the government may need to step in and provide it. Are benefits too generous? In which case there may be an incentive to stay on benefits rather than work. Is is it too difficult to hire and fire workers, therefore discouraging firms from taking on workers? So there's always different ways we can look at reducing an economic problem like unemployment. Economists may have different opinions or stress different options over the other, but definitely an issue like unemployment is something that an economist can consider and try to offer alternatives on how to improve. Now, you could also say, what are the limitations of economics? Because don't economists often get it wrong or fail to predict certain events? And yes, there are many limitations of economists and economics. And as a subject and discipline, the aim is to always try to improve the way that we deal with issues and improve our understanding and try to develop better suggestions, better policies to deal with economic problems. And also, it's also very important what we give priority to. So, for example, you could say classical economics. Economics is, kind of assumes that the goal is to, say, increase GDP, increase output, increase income. And this is quite a simplistic view that society is better off if people have more money. But as we look into it in more detail, we might say, well, living standards, economic welfare, there's many more factors involved than just GDP per capita. So, for example, a country may have very high economic growth, but at the expense of more pollution, more congestion, and perhaps even increased crime. And so, economics perhaps should be more concerned with wider issues of economic welfare rather than just GDP per capita. So, for example, economics could be important for saying, in society we have many objectives, such as reducing poverty, improving healthcare, improving education, looking after the environment. And if we can meet all these objectives, then also we can add on increasing GDP per capita. So within economics we can perhaps prioritize the wrong things, but economics as a discipline is also one factor deciding which is the most important thing to target. So we need to look at many issues of economic welfare and how to increase general living standards. So that's some of the issues involved in the importance of economics. And I think, just to finish off, you could look at any issue in society and look at that from an economic perspective. You go into a coffee shop. Price of coffee is determined by supply and demand. How much should we pay to workers who grow the coffee beans in developing countries? How much should we pay people selling coffee? How much profit should we allow firms to make? And all this kind of thing. So it's really economics on every street. And this is just a very short introduction into some of the ideas involved in economics.